Whether they know it or not, the line quality of an image will affect their emotions when used correctly. Played basketball last night. So everything hurts today. I need to step up and try to get my game shape back. So today I'm going to be doing some inking. Whether you're using a scratchier style, a more fluid style, these are not just lines on a page. It can create a much more enhanced reading experience. So yeah, today is all about inking, and one of the things that's been top of mind is in my current physical state, I guess, is this idea that my mind still thinks I'm at a certain age. I've been doing this for well over a couple decades, feeling like I'm not the artist I used to be. Now that we've started this new company, I'm trying my best to get back to that game shape, that fighting shape that I'm accustomed to. The interesting thing about inking is that you kind of have to approach it with a sense of confidence, and it's tough because when you're cold and you're kind of and by cold I mean similar to playing a ball game, you need to warm up. I suppose as I'm saying this out loud, I could solve this problem by doing warm-up drawings, but I don't. I jump right into it. You have to do it with a sense of confidence. Even if you're faking the confidence, a lot of that has to do with the quality of line that you get when you're moving your hand at a faster pace. The slower you go, the higher the chance of that line work becoming less stable, kind of squiggly. But yeah, typically the faster your movements are when you're flicking the brush, the more smooth the quality of the line will be. So it's, like I said, it's one of those things where if you're not confident, it will show in the line. And even though I don't do it, this could be a case of do as I say, not as I do. It could probably be remedied by doing a practice run, warming up on a separate piece of page before you start inking the actual page, just so that you don't mess it up. Unfortunately, I jump right into it. Let's say you're like me and you don't like practicing, you don't like warming up, you like just jumping right into it, but at the same time, you also don't want to mess it up. You're too lazy to warm up, you don't have the patience, but at the same time, you want the quality of line that you would get if you warmed up. So what I typically do is I'll start on things that have a more natural feel, right? So for instance, hair is something that is a natural texture, and you can kind of afford to mess up certain parts. It's much more forgiving, mostly because you could cover it right back up. But when I'm inking cold, I guess, and I'm not quite warmed up, what I tend to do is I'll work on hair or other aspects that are natural. Rocks are great for that. I find that when I begin a page and that's how I'm starting the day. I haven't warmed up, I haven't limbered up my inking prowess, I guess. Look for an element of the page that will have natural textures. And, don't start with the face, don't start with the eyes. That's the worst thing you can do. Me personally, I find that I mess up the eyes a lot, and I tend to leave that out for the times when I'm feeling confident. The moment I start feeling like I have a good groove going on, that's when I'll ink the eyes. But for the sake of warming up on the page, as Allen Iverson once famously said, practice. Talking about practice, not the game, practice. In this case, we're taking a bit of an Allen Iverson approach by not practicing and jumping right into the page. And the best way to do that is find a natural element on a page that will allow you to basically warm up. Like I said, rocks, hair, things that have a natural texture where perfection isn't the goal, and you kind of have the ability to be much more free with your lines. So in this case, as you can see, I'm moving my brush fairly quickly, and it's resulting in these kind of broken lines, but it looks really cool, because again, it's adding texture to the piece. It's creating a natural lines that feel spontaneous and yet controlled at the same time. When I want to say that there's really no control here. It's kind of just doing its own thing. This particular brush, it's a little bit more mangled up. It's resulting, the single stroke from this brush, which has seen better days, is resulting in multiple lines, which is creating a nice spontaneous texture that has energy, but at the same time, it feels like there's a bit of control. It will follow the path that you do the stroke in, but the quality of line, the way the bristles spread apart, that's something that's completely out of your control. But at the same time, that's what you want. You want that level of spontaneity and randomness, and that's how you get these beautiful lines. I'm not saying these particular lines are beautiful, but I'm saying that the results from this brush it's beautiful. It's not something that I have in my head. It's completely doing it with a life all its own. Obviously, I have some part in it, but not a major part. It's really the brush doing its thing, doing what it's supposed to do, doing what it's created for, and I'm kind of just here to facilitate that. When it comes to figuring out which direction the line work should go, think of the surface that you're inking, and what you want to do is you want to follow the grain of that surface in order to indicate the shape of the surface through the shadow and line work. The thing I love about brush is that I find it a lot easier to create shapes and three-dimensionality. A simple thing to keep in mind when it comes to figuring out how to use weight lines is you want to figure out where your light is coming from. Traditionally speaking, where it's darkest, that's where the line is going to be its thickest, right? And the closer you are to the light, the line can begin to get thinner, maybe even fade, maybe even disappear. The trick to a successful line weight is really about the technique. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the faster you move your hand, the more fluid that line weight will be. I mean, you can certainly move slower to do it, but for me personally, there is almost 100% probability that the slower I move my hand, the wobblier that line will get. Now, here's the thing: the first time you do it, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to find that, you've penciled a certain shape, you've penciled a certain line, and then the moment you do the weight lines, yeah, you didn't follow it. It can be frustrating at times, especially if you've penciled really tightly. But if, like me, you decide to pencil a lot more looser, it's a bit more difficult to be disappointed when in the pencils you don't establish anything that is too precious or too precise. So, by having a looser pencil, the benefit of it is that, it's hard to let yourself down when the line work isn't really there and it's more just about the shape. Long and short of it is that if you want some fluid weight lines, you do have to move your brush stroke fast. You have to move at a certain speed that the brush, the speed and the velocity of it will flick in a certain way that will create a line quality that goes from thick to thin. So another tool I like to use when I'm inking, especially when it comes to aspects of the image that's a little bit more coarse, something that's a little craggly, are these Crow pens. This one in particular is a G nib. I'm using like a pen holder. Again, I think I got this from Amazon, I want to say. There are certain tools from Japan that unfortunately I'm unable to get from the local art store, and I bought it from Amazon. This nib pen is great for inking parts of the image that is a bit more sharp, something that requires like a blunt edge. Even when you hear this, check this out. At first I didn't like that sound, but then after a while I realized that to me it's a soothing sound. I mean, it may feel like scratching a chalk. It may feel like scratching a chalkboard to some people. So if you're one of those people that then I don't know if this is for you. Although I hate chalkboard, nail on a chalkboard. I hate that sound. But somehow I enjoy this. I don't know why, but I don't know what that means, to be honest. I don't know what I'm trying to say other than I like the sound of this particular thing. Anyways, what's great about this is how blunt and how coarse and how craggly of a quality you can get from this. It's great for it's working out nicely for this particular part of the image, mostly because her skin is burnt, it's peeling, and technology is beginning to take hold of aspects of Reina's humanity, and there's something aggressive. I would say that's the best way to describe inking with a nib. It feels aggressive, at least the way I use it. I've seen some people use it in a very delicate way, but I find that brush is perfect for that. It has a natural, soft, fluid quality, but with a nib, it's sharp. And in fact, a little bit of story time. When I was working on the Flash, the whole thing was primarily inked with brush. Mostly because my goal was to accentuate the fluidity of the character, not just in the way I told the story, because I used very flowy panels, very unconventional panels, but it worked really well for the character. And another thing I used in order to really sell that fluidity is I primarily inked it with brushes. Because it does have this natural flow that really created a sense of motion. And it was so much fun. It was very scary to ink with a brush. I find it is very difficult to control, and the level of quality, looking back at those books, uh, it's not, it doesn't feel like a person who, the inking that I did on the Flash, it doesn't feel like a person who has complete control of their medium. And I think that's okay. I think the energy, I think my enthusiasm came through the page, and the readers felt that. So when I left to go work on Detective Comics, it's a brand new type of character, right? Batman is this character whose main goal is to create order in a city filled with chaos. Aside from making the panels much more rigid and square and sharp edges, I also started inking with a nib. It gave the book a certain sense of edginess, a sharp line quality. So when I started working on Detective, I really wanted to differentiate it from my Flash work, and the best way I could do that visually, aside from the adjustments I made with my paneling, is also with the tools I was using. So I primarily used nibs for that in order to accomplish a much more sharp line quality and give it that grit that it needed. I think coming off the Flash, Batman wasn't a character that I think a lot of people saw me doing. I know during that time there was a sense that I would hop onto a book like Superman, since it's much more in line with the imagery of the Flash. Batman was something that wasn't in my perceived wheelhouse, and that's what drew me to working on that book, was trying to push myself artistically and use different tools and try to tap a different aspect of myself, both as an artist and as a writer. And Detective Comics gave me that opportunity. So here we are now working on this particular page where I'm using both. I'm using both brush and nib, and for the most part, the majority of this book is probably going to be inked with brushes, whether it's the brush that you just saw, or sometimes, actually most of the time recently, I've been using a brush pen. It's very convenient and it's great. I'll show that to you guys another time because of what's happening to the character. This is a page that allows me to dig into my utility belt and try to create different vibes with my art through the different tools that I'm using. Again, I just love that. I just love this sound. The main goal of inking is to create depth and separation. When I'm penciling, I'm really just focusing on the layout. I'm focusing on the structure of the drawing. Inking is really where the illustrative part of my brain is tapped into. So my main goal when I'm inking my pieces is to create depth, clarity. That's a big thing, otherwise, if you don't have clarity in inks, there's going to be a lot of heavy lifting for the colorist to do in order to make an image readable, and I think that's going to be an ongoing theme for you as you're making your own comic book. Readability goes beyond just the story. It goes with the clarity of storytelling, with your panels, the clarity of line work, and by clarity, I don't mean clean lines. I mean an image that is readable. There's certainly plenty of artists whose work is very messy. The line work is sporadic, it's all over the place, but they're still able to create a sense of clarity of the image. You know, it's about creating an image where the sum is greater than its parts, and overall what you're trying to accomplish at the end of the day is to have an image that services the story. Because, you know, that's one of the things about creating a comic book, is that, you know, I feel like I say this all the time, is that I'm a storyteller first and an artist second. And even though art is what got me into comic books, I find that once I was in the industry and, you know, you do this thing long enough, you realize that it's really all about the story. As an artist myself, obviously there's artists whom I follow, whose work I admire, but, you know, when it comes to longevity, you know, people follow characters, they fall in love with characters, and as artists, we want to be able to nurture that. You know, we want to be able to say that, yeah, you know, my artwork, my story really helped the readers connect with the character, and hopefully have the audience follow the characters along. I know that seems like it has nothing to do with inking, but trust me, it all works together, you know, from the writing to the layouts to the penciling to the inking to the coloring to the lettering. You know, a comic book is really a team effort, and ideally as a reader, you're not noticing the parts, you're noticing the sum, and that your takeaway from it is that, you know, this reading experience was great, it was entertaining. Yeah, you know, it's, you know, you're trying to evoke emotion. And I find that with inking, whether you're using a scratchier style, a more fluid style, the way you use the brush, the technique that you're using in order to create shadows and separation, the lines have the ability to subtly contribute to the overall experience of the audience, whether they know it or not. The line quality of an image will affect their emotions. When used correctly, it can create a much more enhanced reading experience. These are not just lines on a page. These are, it's contributing to the overall experience that the reader will have as they're going through the journey of the story with the characters. Each line, each craggly line, or each smooth line, or fluid line, or messed up line, all of those contribute to a feeling in the readers. While they may not be able to articulate what's happening, they're feeling it. You know, it's like that bass, right? Like, imagine like a car passing by with their annoying loud bass, but you feel it in your chest. You know, you feel that boom, 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 right? It's subtle, but it's there, you know. And I think when it comes to line work and inks and shadows and whatever line varieties you decide to use, that is all a part of it. It is all part of an experience that you're trying to create for the reader.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to show support for Peter and I's work, please consider pre-ordering the Rocketfellers Volume 1, which will be available at your local retailers on September 10th, but you can pre-order it now. I'm going to pop the information down below. Thanks for watching.